2023. From my perspective, many of the university's disciplinary missteps stem from this fundamental conflict of interest. The financial prospects of developing a marketable testing and trace program caused the university's confusing and shifting COVID-19 requirements. Although it has been true all year that alternative testing procedures which Antonio could have complied with had existed, they were not communicated through any of the university's mass mails until after his dismissal was finalized. What recent communications we have received have all been extremely misleading and unclear. For example, the first reference in any of our emails to these alternative testing accommodations coincided with Ramadan. And recent emails have made clear that alternative testing accommodations would end after Ramadan. However, the university meant this to apply to students who had first qualified due to religious beliefs, and not for students with medical exemptions, such as Antonio's. This is just one of many examples of the confusing messaging about the requirements and alternative options that would have been available for Antonio. It appears that it was simpler for the university to impose vague testing requirements with harsh penalties, without instead ensuring that its testing program was reasonable and accessible for all members of our community. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that statement, Hadrian. Next, we're going to move on to Advith. Advith is a PhD candidate, also in the math department. Advith is also a member of the grievance committee at the GEO, and he'll be sharing a few words on Antonio's situation from the perspective of another student in the same department. So with that, Advith, take it away.
Thank you, Kai. I'm Advith Govindarajan, part of a math PhD candidate and part of the GEO grievance committee. As members of the GEO, we support public health efforts, but what the university has done is not good for public health. The Office for Student Conflict Resolution, the OSCR, the committee that has resulted in these dismissals, has focused entirely on punishing students. This includes students such as Ivor and Antonio, whose specific situations represent the failure of the university to accommodate things like disability and citizenship status. This represents a pattern of malicious and biased conduct by the OSCR and the university. There's no effort here to solve the specific situations that make testing compliance difficult. Instead, the university focuses on probation and dismissal over solving those specific situations. The university cares more about reporting its low positivity rates than it does about public health. It cares more about marketing its testing apparatus than it does about the health and safety of its graduate students and the community at large.
Great, thank you, Advith. Another housekeeping item here. I forgot to mention this at the start, but if you are in the meeting and you're not speaking, please keep your microphone muted. I think everybody's done a good job of that so far. Just wanted to point it out. Okay, so next we have Carla, who is going to give us some much needed broader perspective. Carla is a linguistics master's student, and at the GEO, Carla is an officer at large, and she is the chair of the People First Cancel Debt Committee. With that introduction, Carla, please.
Thank you so much, Kai, and thank you everyone for being here in such an important moment for us. Like Hadrian also mentioned in his statement, and also Advith, the university keeps putting up a show to be the most leading and predominant university around COVID mitigation and technology. But what the university is actually doing is reproducing carceral and policing logic at a time in which this country has been questioning the usage of policing and the usage of carceral spaces. It is traumatic enough to be a student and going through this pandemic, and to be a student of color like Ivor and Antonio, and to also at the same time, like, it's traumatic experience of being kicked out from your school and even evicted in the most incredible public health emergency of our lifetime. And what this shows is that the university is putting profitable standards over people. We want to also highlight the importance of the lack of relationship between punishing people and actually mitigating COVID-19. We know that during last semester, the university punished a significant amount of individual undergrads and grad students, but still finished up with more than 4,000 cases last semester, which was nearly 5 times more what the university had predicted for this semester. So what it shows us is that punishing doesn't solve COVID-19 spread. What does solve COVID-19 spread is to putting people first and to reduce the amount of in-person interaction which the university hasn't done. Interestingly, also over the fall, we saw a significant amount of recreational activities at Memorial Stadium. As a matter of fact, the university announced over a mass mail this week that there's going to be another social event over this weekend and on May 1st. But interestingly, the problem is Ivor and Antonio's individual actions. We want to also highlight that during this process, the only people that have managed to care enough for us is ourselves, right? Our union. Those professors that gave the extra mile for Ivor and Antonio and for all of us. Those workers that have maintained the university alive during these conditions. And if we care more, we need to decide more in this process, and we demand the university to take into consideration Ivor's and Antonio's ideas to do this process in a trauma-informed way, in an ethical way, and most importantly, in a humane way. While the university keeps marketing the power of I as their slogan, we are exercising the power of us. And this is a call for the university to put compassion over compliance and to put people first by allowing the GEO to be part of all the decision-making regarding the disciplinary charges of our students. Thank you.
Great, that was really excellent, Carla. Yeah, and that last request is something that we've made at every possible juncture with the university. We've requested to have a GEO representative on the SHIELD T3 committee. We've requested to have a GEO representative on other COVID-19 committees that focus specifically on discipline and other issues, and at every opportunity the university has declined to take a GEO representative on board and to hear specifically from graduate students. Okay, great. So we're making excellent time here. Next, we're going to hear from Ivor Chen, who is a physics PhD candidate and also a member of the GEO. As we all know, Ivor's case went public last February and garnered over 40,000 signatures on his change.org petition, which ultimately resulted in Ivor being readmitted to the university later that month. So with that, Ivor, please take it away.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Ivor Chen. So on January 29th, I was wrongfully dismissed by the university on charges related to my COVID-19 testing and compliance. Well, during the fall semester last year, I did not test regularly because I was working 100% remotely. And going to the test site was my largest source of COVID-19 exposure. And I was worried about spreading COVID-19 to my mom, who was living with me at that time. Although I explained my situation to the OSCR committee during my disciplinary hearing, the committee decided to dismiss me nonetheless. With considerable efforts from the GEO, from my department of Physics, and from Department of Math, the College of Engineering, and the Graduate College, and with substantial support online, we were able to persuade the university to modify disciplinary sanctions against me. I was readmitted on February 16th. That was a very hard-fought victory. The university only modified its decision after facing enormous public pressure. After my readmission, I published a statement to express my gratitude to all who have supported me and to call for change to the university's disciplinary procedures regarding COVID-19 testing noncompliance. On March 10th, the university did announce that all graduate students who do not come to campus are no longer requested to be tested. This was a victory won by the GEO negotiation team, and at that time I was glad that the university finally heeded our call for a more humane testing and disciplinary procedure. Well, but the Antonio incident shows me that more can and should be done. Well, Antonio will explain the details of his situation. When I first heard about his case, I was deeply disappointed. Like many, I expected a more thorough change to the current disciplinary procedure regarding COVID-19 testing noncompliance. This clearly did not happen, and Antonio is not the only one who is still facing unjust punishment. All of us expected the disciplinary system to be humane and nuanced, and at the very least, to be fair and just. We expected the system to be transparent and responsive to students' needs because the university has a duty of care for his students. Yet it seems that in its current state, the university is more interested in handing out punishment swiftly than fulfilling its commitment to safeguarding the well-being of all of its students. I had hoped that my case would be a trigger for a thorough discussion among students and faculty members on COVID-19 disciplinary procedures. Now, with a new case at hand, I still hope the change will come. I would close by quoting what my professors wrote in their letter of support. They said, strict enforcement of student conduct violations has been an essential part of our university's success in controlling the spread of COVID-19. But it is equally important that the university maintain its commitment to a just and nuanced student conduct system in which punishment fits violation. The university's reputation regarding the fairness with which it arbitrates student conduct violations will last far longer than the current pandemic. And with that, I would like to end my statement. Thank you very much.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much for making that statement. Next, we're going to hear from Antonio Ruiz, who we've all heard about today and in the recent press this week. Antonio is a PhD candidate in the math department and a member of the GEO. Antonio, I believe you have a statement prepared. We're thrilled to hear from you, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kai. Thank you, reporters, for coming to listen to our statement. So I'm going to begin my statement. The ambiguity surrounding my case allows me only to speculate on why I was dismissed. One possibility is that I was dismissed because an Office of Student Conflict Resolution representative asked me during the sanctioned deliberation if I was willing to take the university's own proprietary saliva test, and I answered, I will seek accommodations. Another possibility is that I was dismissed because during the fall semester, I admitted to the case coordinator that I was not testing because I had kidney problems and I was scared of getting COVID-19. For this admission, the Office of Student Conflict Resolution placed me under student conduct probation with the directive that any deviation or mistest will result in a referral to the appropriate disciplinary subcommittee where dismissal should be the expected outcome. The case coordinator told me that I could apply for a testing exemption, but he never told me that alternative testing was available, or that students living on campus were specifically excluded from obtaining testing exemptions. If disability resources and educational services was able to provide me with extra time to take exams, increased flexibility with assignment due dates, and an isolated exam environment, why were similar accommodations not extended for the COVID-19 testing requirement? In my view, my dismissal was a function of systemic ableism. In rolling out saliva testing for students, little thought was given to how students with disabilities could be supported. The university does not seem to educate its administrators on how to direct students to obtain COVID-19 testing accommodations. The process of obtaining testing accommodations is full of red tape and misinformation. It can take students weeks to obtain accommodations, yet the Office of Student Conflict Resolution is quick to dismiss students who fail to be testing compliant indiscriminately, even when the Office of Student Conflict Resolution's own voting panel does not vote to sanction them for testing non-compliance. The university expects disabled students to actively advocate for themselves to receive testing accommodations, as if having a disability was not hard enough. We demand that the university immediately drop all charges against me and fully readmit me. Immediately and retroactively readmit all students dismissed for testing non-compliant and reduce their student conduct probation to a student conduct reprimand. Give students a 1-week grace period after non-compliance charges are brought forward to become testing compliant and to have their charges dropped. As it stands, the university's disciplinary process is like a rubber stamp, only meant to give the illusion of due process. Consequently, we demand the following general reforms of the university's disciplinary process. Disallow Office of Student Conflict Resolution representatives from participating in closed deliberations with the voting panel. Allow only one member appointed by the Office of Student Conflict Resolution to participate in questioning. Allow the student's advisor to speak for the student, or at least to speak at all during the hearing. I mean, they should speak for the student. Disclose academic integrity reports and Senate committee for student discipline reports for every academic year following the academic year 2017 to 2018 and release all future reports in a timely manner. Increase the minimum number of students on the Senate Committee for Student Discipline's voting panel for appeals to 50% plus 1. The fact that the University of Illinois will not even consider these clear improvements, much less bring forward an investigation into unfair discipline, speaks to a deep problem with the Office of Student Conflict Resolution.
Okay, thank you for that passionate statement, Antonio. So we've left intentionally plenty of time here for questions. We've put together this panel to bring light to what we view as a clear problem with the university disciplinary procedures, particularly as they relate to COVID non-compliance. And we want to be as transparent as possible, right? We want to answer as many questions here as possible, and make sure that what the problem is clear, what we view the solution is clear, and to make sure that we're not holding back any information from the public. So with that, I'll open the floor. Anybody who has a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it, and we'll either answer that questions ourselves or direct you on to someone who can.
Hi, I'm with the News Gazette, and I guess I was wondering, Antonio, if there's any update to your case since the petition launched. I just noticed before I got on that there was some updates posted to the petition, so yeah, I was curious if there's been any progress.
Right, so there hasn't been. So the university responded to one of the several articles by saying something like purple has prevented them from describing things about the situation. Right? So we sent out a petition update where I described in detail what the charges were, and I clarified the date that, like, the process that I went through to obtain the COVID, the nasal swab alternative testing accommodation. You know, I detailed this because I had the impression that, like, you know, from the outside, someone seeing that it took me like a week to obtain the accommodation, someone might think that I was not working hard, or that I was, you know, not doing my part to obtain this accommodation. But I made a lot of phone calls and filled out applications and was given this information, and I detailed with timestamps every single phone call that most of the phone calls that I made to obtain this accommodation.
Yeah, and just to clarify here, as far as Antonio's dismissal goes, as far as the no trespass order goes, as far as the petitioning to re-enter the university after 1 year, none of those have changed. The university has made no concessions as far as reducing the discipline on Antonio goes as of this point. Does anybody else from the GEO want to add on to that? No? Okay, great. Well, we're happy to take more questions if there are any.
This is Taylor Decker with Foxville, Illinois. Can you hear me?
Yep, coming through loud and clear, Taylor.
Awesome. Antonio, I am just curious what your plans are after May 13th at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to part of the problem, right? I mean, normally your housing would be secure, right? But that's an perhaps unplanned consequence of the university's disciplinary choice, right? I mean, you know, not only is Antonio being dismissed from the university, but because he lives in university housing, he's also being dismissed from his housing situation, and that's, you know, completely unacceptable in a global pandemic where, you know, any process of moving increases your exposure, especially if you're at increased risk for COVID-19.
I think I should add that they also abruptly cut off my pay without telling me what day I was not going, like from what day they cut off my pay. So I had continued working because I'm under contract to work until a certain day. And despite this, they abruptly cut off my pay without letting me know. And you know, my professors that I'm working for and expecting to be, you know, working on making final exams and exams for them and grading exams for them and tutoring their students, they did not know either. I mean, they also had the expectation that I would be working for them until the end of the semester.
Yeah, I'd like to just add to that point quickly, which is, as Antonio was saying, not only was he left unaware that his work contract had abruptly ended, but none of his direct supervisors were informed by this. If any departmental leadership in the Department of Mathematics were informed by the university, this was not communicated to Antonio's direct teaching supervisors. However, from my perspective, it seems most likely that the university simply terminated his contract and didn't communicate this to anyone. In particular, Antonio, you know, has continued to try and do his best, working in good faith, continuing to grade homeworks, to sit in the tutoring room, all the while the university was essentially participating in wage theft. It was more than happy to allow him to continue working without letting him know, or anyone else know, that they would not be paying him any further.
Yeah, and perhaps this is a good opportunity to make an announcement with respect to Antonio's case. So Antonio's contract with the university, his employment contract, subject to his dismissal, has been terminated, and so he is now without stable income for the remainder of the semester and possibly next year as well. So I'm going to paste into the chat here a link for Antonio's GoFundMe, which we're announcing at this venue for the first time, and we'll also post to the petition and other forms of social media that we have available. We're requesting that anyone who is able should support Antonio financially in this difficult time. And if the university should readmit Antonio to the University of Illinois, all donations will be returned to the individual donors via the GoFundMe platform.
Kai, do you mind if I add something if there's no questions so far? I just wanted to quickly add as well, the fact that the university arbitrarily terminated Antonio's contract also shows that they don't even care about the students that Antonio is teaching. I mean, we have students, undergraduate students that are paying $30K, $12K, $15K for Zoom University, and all of a sudden they're receiving a notice that their TA, that their professor, which we want to also state that 50% of the educational labor in this campus is done by graduate students. So dismissing one graduate student, dismissing two graduate students has a domino effect in the quality of education that students were promised to receive even during this pandemic. And what's even worse, to do waste fed when the university has nearly over $870 million in unrestricted reserves that could be easily given to Antonio to repair for all the harm done by the university, shows how incredibly ableist, racist, and hypocritical the university has been during this whole situation. So again, we demand transparency, and we demand all charges to be dropped by the university to Antonio, because it's the only fair and humane way for the university to keep their reputation, if they have any, so far up until now.
Okay, are there any more questions on Antonio's case, on anything else that we've discussed today, on the broader issues that we see with the university disciplinary procedure?
Right, can I jump in? My name is Daria, I'm from CU Citizen Access, and my question is more general. What were GEO attempts to modify the COVID-19 disciplinary procedures after Ivor's case? So to prevent such cases like that happened with Antonio.
Excellent question. Thank you for asking that. So maybe I can start first, but anyone else from the GEO, feel free to jump in. So at the time of Ivor's dismissal, and in the weeks afterwards, the GEO made the call for an investigatory review into the circumstances surrounding Ivor's dismissal and his student discipline. And we made that request for an investigation as publicly as we could, and we relayed that request to representatives from the Office of Student Conflict Resolution. We relayed that request through our COVID-19 impact bargaining with the university to the representatives from Labor and Employee Relations, and at every opportunity we made this request that clearly there is something wrong with the disciplinary procedures on campus. If Ivor was swept up into them with a clear case of disproportionate and unfair discipline. But the university has to date declined to perform any sort of investigation, and they've declined to make any changes to the student disciplinary procedures.
Could I just briefly add to that, Kai. I wanted to clarify something Kai mentioned in his answer, which is, not just the sort of informal public call for this investigation, as he alludes to, but the fact that these requests were made in a sort of explicit formal setting in which the union was negotiating with the university as part of the COVID-19 impact bargaining team. So these negotiations have been ongoing as meant to explicitly bargain the fact that our working conditions have changed as a result of the pandemic. I mean, this entire press conference is happening over Zoom, so clearly there have also been changes to our working conditions. What I find notable about this is, as Kai mentioned, when these requests were made formally, there was, no movement at all on the part of the university's representatives. But what I find remarkable is, as a member, not someone who's on this impact bargaining team, just a member of the union who is in some of these meetings, at the most recent COVID-19 impact bargaining team, a representative of the university essentially asked the team, why are these still happening? We've been bargaining for almost a year now. All of the other unions on campus have already settled with us. What issues are still at play? And that the fact that we have to have this press conference right now is indicative of several issues, only one of which is related to this COVID-19 testing program. But I'll just sort of leave it at that.
Right, and I'll make a factual point here. So indeed, the university representative at that particular COVID-19 impact bargaining session did claim that the GEO was the only union on campus which continues COVID-19 impact bargaining. But we've learned after reaching out to other unions on campus that is not the case. So the AFSCME on campus and the non-tenure track faculty coalition are also engaging in ongoing COVID-19 impact bargaining. So that's a factual correction there, not to Hadrian. What he said, all of it is entirely correct, but to that particular point made by the university.
Sorry, I would like to add that it's not just the GEO who's requesting a change to the university's disciplinary procedure. I know professors from the physics department who actively wanted to investigate the disciplinary procedures, and in fact, the head of the physics department reached out to me about a week or so ago, asking me if I was willing to help them disclose information with regard to my case so that they can have a very thorough review of the university's disciplinary procedures. So I sent in a formal request to the OSCR office asking them to disclose any files related to my case to a professor who's leading this investigation. The reply I got from the university is basically no, based on privacy concerns. As I understood the situation, I was willing to give up my right to my private information. The university is claiming that they also have private information in those files with regard to my case. So I was only one party in that incident. The other party, which is the university, they're not willing to disclose the information to any third-party investigators, even if the third-party investigators are professors from this university. And I also know students. I think it was last week, a very concerned undergrad student. He reached out to me. He told me that he was going to have a meeting with the OSCR and asking them to explain the situation with respect to Antonio's case and respect to my case. I believe he had a meeting on last Friday, and the result basically was that the university cannot discuss anything with regard to my case to anyone other than me, and they refuse to promise any substantial change to the current disciplinary procedures. So it's not just that the GEO is hitting a brick wall every time they requested a change. Basically, everyone who wanted a change is facing a brick wall. So this is the situation now.
Ben, did you have a follow-up question there?
Yeah, sure. I guess I was wondering, why do you think the OSCR and the university changed its decision in Ivor's case right away and hasn't on this case, on Antonio's case?
Well, I guess maybe I'll just start and say that I don't want to speculate on the internal goings on of the university disciplinary system, but I do know one thing, which is that the department that Ivor is a part of, which I am a part of as well, the physics department at the University of Illinois, was extremely supportive of his case, and I think that played a big role, and there was the further time pressure that since he is an international student, I think that it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was something like 2 weeks after the dismissal, your visa status was going to be revoked. So we had this really tight 2-week window where that pressure may not exist in Antonio's case, but yeah, I think that those are a few contributing factors that might have led to the expedited change of sanctions.
From my perspective, my advisor was he's a professor at the math department, so he also mustered a lot of support in math department as well, I think. And from what I understand, when I talked to my department head at physics department, there are many more professors who have been working behind the scene than I was aware of at that time. So it seemed to me in retrospect that it's sort of like the entire physics department was fighting on my behalf, working towards reinstating me to this university. And also, yes, me being an international student did add to the pressure. And I also wanted to add that I've been in contact with lawyers outside of with lawyers, and we are preparing lawsuits at that time. And I even on the day when I received the news that the university decided to modify the disciplinary action, that morning I made a phone call to a state representative in the state senate. She was very concerned because because of my immigration status, and from my phone call, as far as I understand, there have been state legislators. There have been members of state legislations. They have been making phone calls to the universities, I guess, pressuring them to modify the decision. So as you can see, in order for the university to slightly change their disciplinary sanction, you have to put enormous pressure on them. My petition online mustered, I think, 40,000 signatures, and it made news back home in China as well. So, well, as my advisor told me, that might be the but that might be one of the sore points that universities cannot bear. I think it's so enormous pressure equals to tiny little change in disciplinary function.
All right. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So I have a question about the feelings. So Antonio, what are you feeling now, and how do you cope with the situation, with the stressful situation? And the same question I have to Ivor, like, how did you cope with this stressful situation, the whole things?
I mean, the way I cope with it is I keep taking action, so that I always have some reason to hope that there will be a significant change.
I'm a pessimist through and through, so I always had multiple contingency plans in place. I planned ahead. After my first disciplinary hearing on January 29th, I started to making plans. So I can't tell you what my plans are, but I have two other plans that might take me somewhere else. But the goal of all of my plan is to continue my research. That's the end goal of all of my plans. So yeah.
Hi, my name's Vivian with WILL. I just had kind of a general question, but how do these recent dismissal issues kind of relate to this larger picture of university treatment of graduate students in general? I mean, not maybe exclusively to the past year, even with COVID.
Excellent question. Does anybody want to take this? I have a few thoughts, but I might need a little bit of time to process them.
One thing I'll maybe just say right off the bat, when it comes to the COVID-19 testing protocol, this whole system, I think that this has from the very beginning been a perfect example of a rhetorical tactic that the university loves to employ when they talk about graduates here, which is, are we graduate students or are we graduate workers? And the answer to that question is, it depends on whatever is most convenient for the university at the given time for the given question. So for example, when it comes to the COVID testing policies, employees of the university, with the exception of graduate employees, were given the exemption from the beginning, which is if they were entirely working off-site, never coming to campus, they were just, automatically eligible for a COVID-19 testing exemption. They didn't need to go through administrative red tape or figure out these things. As employees, they were given sort of this luxury. Whereas graduate students from the very beginning were put into a category with undergraduates in which they were required to show that they deserved an exemption for whatever reason. Many students, initially had difficulties with this. The union itself had to help graduates on campus refile and sort of petition for an exemption if they believed they were owed it at first. And graduate workers were only put into the same category as other university staff after the situation with Ivor. So to my mind, I think this is just one example of that. And I'll leave it to Kai and the other members.
I'll quickly add that one thing that confuses me greatly is that when I pointed out during my disciplinary hearing that I in fact am a graduate employee, well, the university disputed me on that at great length. Then, several weeks ago, when the vaccine was rolling out, we are suddenly characterized as higher education employees, workers in higher education, because we are when every professor when they become eligible for vaccination, we become eligible for vaccination as well. So yeah, at that time I was very confused. Am I an employee or am I not? So that's a question for the university, really.
Yeah, and I completely agree with both of the things that have been said so far. I think the only thing that I have to add, just for a sense of broader context, I think that these particular incidents play into a bigger picture of the fact that graduate students do an enormous amount of work on campus for doing the research that the university gets credit for teaching the students, for doing administrative work. Graduate students and graduate employees do a tremendous amount of the work on campus and get very little credit or compensation for it, right? And I think that the disciplinary procedures that are in place at the university are just one mechanism for keeping graduate employees and graduate students sort of in line, right? Keeping us, thinking that, well, we better just keep our heads down and keep working, and we don't want to make a single misstep, because who knows, you could be the next Ivor or the next Antonio.
One thing I want to add here is that there are a lot of stakeholders in the university, but when the university makes these policies, such as their COVID disciplinary procedure, they generally don't seek input from us or from many of the other stakeholders who are in administration. So in a lot of ways, we're left out of this process of deciding what happens here. In addition to this, what's already been said about the for the profit motive of the university's testing program, in the same sense, it is a choice of the university to make it difficult to get these exemptions. This is not something that's done passively. This is a very deliberate choice.
Great, thanks for that, Advit. Daria, did I see that you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Were both these cases, Ivors and Antonios, decided and heard by the same OSCSR people?
So I don't think we're allowed to comment on who the individuals in any given hearing were.
But who are they? But like, were they the same people, or do they change? Do they choose other people for different cases?
So I believe that there are multiple case coordinators in OSCR, and there are multiple people who a particular disciplinary panel can be drawn from. So I don't think that there's any guarantee that they were the same individuals that were on the panels, but certainly they were all part of the same system. Certainly they were all drawn from the same pool of people who constitute the Office for Student Conflict Resolution. Does that answer the question?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Maybe one thing I'd like to add just quickly. I see, Antonio, you have something to say as well. Go ahead.
Office of Student Conflict Resolution is appointing the people who will be at the hearing doing the questioning, and who will be suggesting to the voting panel, the jury, what your sanctions should be. And who are deliberating with the voting panel in closed deliberations where you have no idea what's going on. They're deliberating with them what you should be charged for, and are there with them when they're voting. And same with when they're there and you're not there. They're there deciding, suggesting to the panel what your sanctions, what your punishment should be. And they're there with the panel while they're voting. Like, I mean, imagine if, like, when you went to vote for a political candidate, a police officer or 3 police officers were there with you while you were voting. This is a very similar situation.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that during my disciplinary hearing, the OSCR officers was actually training one of the subcommittee members. So yeah, if you want to seek something like independence of judicial systems here, you're not going to get any, because the jurors and the prosecutors, they're one thing in this situation.
Did you have something you wanted to add to that, Adrian, or was all of it covered?
What I wanted to say, I think Ivor said just perfectly, which is just, as Antonio pointed out, it's absurd to have a sort of quasi-legal process in which a prosecutor is part of the jury's deliberation and sitting in that closed vote.
And that you're just one student, and you're getting asked. You have an advisor, but your advisor cannot even introduce themselves. You have to introduce them. Your advisor cannot say a single word throughout the hearing. And you're being interrogated by 3 separate expert interrogators from the Office of Student Conflict Resolution, as well as the panel. And they are suggesting, if a panel member asks a question, they have the ability to change that question and to ask it in a new way, which is permissible to them.
Yeah, excellent. So I know that some people have to leave at 5, but like I said at the beginning, we're here to be as transparent as possible and to try and answer as many questions as we can. Are there any remaining questions? If not, I'll just close us out here and thank all of you for attending, and I'll encourage you to please, if there are any follow-up questions, send them to geo@uigeo.org. That information should be on the media advisory that we sent out earlier in the week, and we're happy to schedule follow-up meetings as need be. So with that, thanks very much, and we'll look forward to hearing from you soon. Bye, everyone.